When you hear the tone, it will be just 3 minutes to showtime. Still time to visit the refreshment stand before the next feature starts. There's just 1 minute to showtime. After the next feature begins, the refreshment stand will continue to serve you. It will remain open, so there's still time to add to the fun of enjoying the movie. When the show is over, please remember to place the speaker back on its stand. If the speaker is accidentally broken, please let someone at the refreshment stand know about it. We appreciate your coming out to the drive-in tonight. When you leave, please drive carefully. We hope you'll come back again soon. And now, showtime.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Fleapit After Dark. I am your regular host, Jeremy Brown, and it feels great to be back into the grind of film conversation when time allows. I've been busy, of course, but moments like these, they gotta count. I'm honored to have this returning guest for the film we are covering and to piece together what I think makes a great double feature with the film we covered on the previous episode, The Last House on Dead End Street. Coming right back for round two is none other than good friend of the show, Alex Menick of the band XK Scenario. Alex, welcome back to the Fleet Pit. And thanks for the recommendation, by the way, for this episode. How are you doing tonight?
I'm honored to be back so soon. Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about this film because pretty much you're the only person that I can at this point. Yeah, I'm doing very well. Very excited. Very excited to get into this.
The limited list of people Jeremy, he might like Hollywood
Yeah, 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 yeah,
90028.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm honored, and honestly, it's films like these every once in a while that really stand out, and even if I, for whatever reason, don't end up liking them, they're still worthy of discussion, they're still worthy of coverage, and they're still worthy of the show. This is the Flea Pit. We're a crumbling old theater. We don't give a shit about what happens to uh the content, I guess, of an old film that may end up lost and forgotten or may get restored, and like this film, as we're hoping, still will get that treatment at some point. But yeah, we are covering Hollywood 90028.
This is the timely suspense story of the year, filmed in the most sex-oriented locale in the world, Hollywood 90028. This is the story of the thousands of pretty young girls who come to Hollywood to find stardom and find instead they have to survive any way they can. Hollywood 90028 is the address where you'll find countless girls doing things they never thought they would do and meeting people they never dreamed of meeting, not even in their wildest nightmares. Hollywood 90028, the sex and sun capital of the world, becomes the setting for one of the most bizarre stories in years, when a man who cannot control his strange desires goes hunting in Hollywood for ways to satisfy them. All Hollywood becomes his hunting ground as he stalks his pretty young prey. From the bright lights of the Sunset Strip to shining sands, and he cannot and will not stop. But even in a town where anything goes, you can go too far, looking for just one more thrill.
It's not my fault. I'm not responsible.
The hunter and the prey together for one of the most talked about stories in the most talked about town in the world. There was no other way to tell this story of a man that not even love could stop and the girls that not even love could help.
Directed by Christine Hornisher, written by Craig Hansen, and starring Christopher Augustine, who plays Mark, uh, Janet Dilger, who plays Michelle, Dick Glass, may not be his real name, I don't know, who plays Joe Ball, Gail Davis, who plays Gretchen. Then we also have Ralph Campbell as the producer, Kia Cameron, and Diana Huntress, and music, especially the music. We got to harness on the music a little bit here by the great Basil Polidorus. I hope I pronounced his last name right. I always get some pronunciations wrong, but the great one of the great composers who did RoboCop, Conan the Barbarian, The Hunt for Red October, and plenty of others. Yeah, this is a great little, what seems to be on the surface a bit of a sleaze fest, but actually a very solemn, intimate, uh, depressing tale about somebody who may have been the Hollywood strangler, but has a backstory of his own and certain ideals of his own. And it kind of tells this short little tale about his life in Hollywood in the span of about 73 minutes. And let's get into it. Uh, I guess, Alex, first and foremost, how did you encounter this movie, and how did it first resonate with you?
I first found out about it because just through the new Beverley lineup. Yeah, I'm like always following their page, and I both live on the East Coast, so that's obviously in Hollywood. So it's kind of form of torture, like always seeing just the lineups they have constantly not being able to go. But so um, yeah, I saw them talk about it because I believe they screened it back in September of last year. I want to say sometime around then. They may have done it before that as well. And I think I saw Grindhouse releasing talk about it because they're the ones who worked on the new restoration that is still yet to come out. And obviously, we're both very curious and excited about that. But yeah, I mean, I heard some chatter about it. I heard just the general the story about a sort of lonely guy who works as a camera operator in LA, and specifically for adult films, and that he's also, of course, a psychotic killer. So I was like, perfect, that's all that's all I need to know. And then I also read that the people were especially shocked by the ending, and just for the new Beverly crowd to to gasp and have a big reaction, I think definitely says a lot. So
Yeah.
that very much intrigued me. So just those two things just made me really intrigued by it. And I'm just I'm interested in any type of those kind of tragic stories when it comes to Hollywood and whatnot. I mean, uh thankfully there's a very low quality but still mostly watchable VHS rip that on the internet that we were able to acquire. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got sucked into it.
Speaking of that VHS rip, it was uh fun the couple of times viewing it that you get that constant humming all the way through from the rip, and then once in
Mhm.
a while it would just like kind of cut out and cut back into the sound and whatnot, which it, it kind of gives off this grimy quality a little bit, where like, oh, this is something I shouldn't be watching, or somebody like recorded this and passed this on to a thrift store or something like that. But there's when you really are able to kind of analyze it a whole, like they were shooting this like a legit $1 million making movie. There was a lot of like effort put into it. And yeah, that just makes you yearn for that restoration. And I think even the director, Christine Hornisher, who went to UCLA, she was a real advocate for seeing what you can kind of get away with in those locations. And I think what you can make out, at least there's production value. I guess that's what I'll just say right there and then, is that like, there's something there to really appreciate. Um, just given the way that we can only watch it at the moment, unfortunately, but yeah, like you said, it's still watchable, at least for people like us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited to see that restoration, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
Sure.
But yeah. Back to the film. So, um, what were your first impressions of just the first scene? Because I think there's this fantastic bait and switch kind of.
How far is it?
About a block. Think you can make it?
Is it worth trying?
I think so.
Then I'll make it.
It gets lonely sometimes. My old man split on me a couple of months ago.
You won't be lonely.
uh Sort of situation that goes on with like the first scene and then the rest of the film. So what did you kind of make of that?
Well, so the Mark character, he's yeah, I the way it kind of blends into the opening title crawl with the photographs of what we can mostly assume is him at a young age with his family, predominantly female actually too. Like he's got sisters, he's got one brother, and supposedly might be responsible for the death of his brother. A father in the house or away from the house who's not very present. Um, we get to see kind of the beginnings, or what's continuously happening throughout his career right now, where he's seeing uh random women like outside of work, and almost trying to fill a void that's kind of empty through his family dynamic, and those frustrations sort of come out at a certain point when he's having sex, and he becomes a little bit more forceful and starts to strangle and uh, create sort of a body count a little bit of the women he sees. And I thought it was a really effective opening with the soundtrack, how it was shot, almost in this very pornographic style for a little bit, but still being kind of careful and classy in a way. And then dial back a little bit and start to show like this guy has got a little bit of a history for why he has these psychotic episodes when he's engaging with the women he sees. And it's yeah, it's a weird, it's weird, but it's also it's I'm gonna it's yeah, this is gonna sound weird to say, but it's kind of understandable in a way uh why he's this why he's kind of this crazy, and how he can't I guess find something that will like ground him. And that's why I kind of like the opening where he's kind of just walking like aimlessly through the streets until, you know, somebody comes his way, and it just takes one little thing to trigger him. And yeah, because the whole time the film is advertised like a slasher, and it never really feels that way, even when the kills occur in this film. So I like how the opening contrasted with the rest of the film going forward. To answer your initial question, did you feel the same way, or yeah, how did you respond to it?
No, totally. I mean, the first scene, as you said, I agree. It's still done tastefully, but it really feels as though it like you're pretty much just watching, like almost like a yeah, just very standard '70s like porno, pretty much.
Yeah,
So when I started watching, I kind of just thought that because like you're saying it's on a VHS tape, I thought maybe like this was something that was taped before and the movie's gonna start later or something. Like it felt almost out of place. But I think that was 100% intentional. I think because as we'll get into later in the film, this character Mark, you begin to learn he's very ashamed at the type of work that he does, especially once he encounters somebody that he meets that he's filming, that he really ends up just like really caring about and connecting with on a very personal level. I think that much like the main character, also named Mark in Peeping Tom, funny enough, there's definitely a lot of
yeah,
cool similarities. But the camera is kind of what is kind of that like barrier between the reality that he doesn't want to face and himself. And in this first scene, there's no camera; it's just him and this woman. And I think uh, the type of work that he does, when he's filming, these women. And in the first scene, also, if you notice, like it almost seems as though the film, the part was shot actually to to kind of appeal to more of a male audience or male like eyes in that, because she takes off her clothes first and there's all these shots that are focusing on her and he's like fully clothed the entire time. And it all feels very intentional, and it almost feels as if it's just like it just kind of is all a reaction to his just reality of the shame he feels from being involved in those kinds of films and that world. And then that's when he kind of snaps and he everything takes a turn for the worse. So I thought that was actually like a really really interesting way to start. I think it was 100% intentional, at least personally for me. So
Mm.
Now hold still till I get the focus.
I'm not moving.
Careful, I'll shoot you on your bad side.
I don't have a bad side.
Come on, let's go. You ready, Carol?
Whenever you say, Jobel.
Now, Mark.
Rolling.
That's right, honey. That's right. Move around. Not too fast. Now roll over. That's good.
in many ways like exhibiting the trauma of not just like, yeah, from his family life growing up, but also the work that he does, it causes this weird little disconnect in his brain that, yeah, he has got that great line where he says he doesn't really like to have pictures taken of him very much, if at
Yeah,
all. He doesn't like to be the star. He likes to be behind the camera, and
right.
that's great that you bring up the parallel of Peeping Tom too, because they're both kind of dealing with uh, that paranoid feeling of being the one in control, but you're also the one kind of filming essentially a movie that like in real time. I don't know a better way to describe that, but like they're like you're kind of creating a monster through that sort of uh through that kind of disconnect. And yeah, just to kind of see him snap in these moments, but also still uh feel and show off these like really human, lonely, isolated emotions is I guess like at the time was just like unheard of or wasn't done in this way. And that's why I kind of really appreciate just the direction alone. Because many times, like even though I'm not rooting for Mark at all throughout this whole thing,
Yeah.
but I am kind of feeling for him in many instances. I'm thinking like, dude, it just takes like one like different job or gig and like scenario and maybe like some I don't know, some therapy or even just a chance to reconcile things with your family to set you right back on a good path. He says he's 29, and I look at myself like I'm just like a year younger than this guy. I'm like, and he's already like struggling and in this position where he doesn't know if he can even uh make it with the career that he really wants. And so I'm like, there's so many different like paths where I'm watching this guy and thinking like, oh, you have so many things like set up for you where you can pull this off and be content with your life, and he finds a way to screw it up every time. Uh,
Yeah. No, that's a great point because you're right. I mean, he does have plenty of opportunities to turn things around. But there are also, a lot of things presented to him that I think he in turn then convinces himself that yeah, there is no way out. So like for instance, when he's trying to look for work, film work outside of just the adult films, he's at an interview with some like production company where they're filming like a legitimate film, right? Like not
mhm,
not just like what he's the type of work that he's doing, which the interviewer is sort of asking him for like, can I see some of your work? We need somebody who is experienced, and he kind of has to lie and he says, oh, I work for this company that does like educational films. He's like, they're very dull and it's very hard to get prints from. And
Cameras are still the best part of it for me. I've been freelancing as a cameraman for about 4 years. I'm 29 years old, good health, no wife, no children, 2 crickets, both named Orson.
Swell. And you're free to go on location.
Yeah, I'm free.
Background is good. Where can I see some footage? You brought something with you?
Yeah, I have some reels, but they're in New York. When are you leaving?
The crew's not going till the end of next week. I'd have to see some of your work before I could send you down there. How soon could you get it here?
So I have to contact the guy who has it.
It's a pretty easy job, mostly exteriors. I'm sure you'll be able to do it, but I gotta be able to see something. Don't you have a print of anything here in town? What about this, Jobo pictures? You been shooting for them?
Yeah, but they're kind of difficult to get prints from.
What kind of films do they make? I've never heard of them.
It's a small company. Mostly educational films. Pretty dull.
Mr. Gould, I need your signature.
And the interviewer, the head of the company says, well, sure, but I need to see some of your work. I mean, don't you have something I can see? And then Mark says, well, okay, well, why don't I go and just shoot something right now and then come back and
yeah.
then show that to you? And then the interviewer says, well, no, because I need to see work that you've done for other people, because that's the whole point, because I'm hiring you. And so And that gets into that whole sort of dilemma that happens all the time, where it seems you want to go out and get a job, but then uh, you need all this like prior experience, for it. And in order to get that experience, I mean, it's so it's just this, to a lot of people that can just be this like very just kind of cycle where they just see that there's no way out, or there's really
Sure.
no hope, so
Mhm.
but at the same time, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of times where he could have taken more of an agency, and I think that's a very poignant like part of the film. Is it's almost about people who get used to being in their own sorrows and being comfortable in it, which is like
Yeah.
really really depressing. So
Mhm.
um yeah, so yeah, no, I think this is a very, very, very like depressing movie in a lot of ways. I don't know if you kind of felt that as
Y-
well, but
Yeah, that's what throws it so off, because like you can't really compartmentalize this into anything uh genre wise without like throwing in at least five different like other types of influences that would have like created like a beast like this. Because yeah, like you said, even from the industry standpoint, this is a guy who, yeah, on the side, or as a full hustle, it's a little uneven sometimes when they describe it, but like basically he's doing a lot of um uh porn filmography for this very sleazy producer who has is just eating like boxes of donuts, and
yeah,
has
yeah,
this big old fro and everything, and just kind of you know exactly what this character is all about when you first see him.
yeah, yeah.
and and then you cut to Mark, and he's there for the paycheck, he's there for the cash. He doesn't really like it. He's complaining about like his own studio and workplace. Like, can you like crank up the cool air, and like
Or it's too hot in here.
By the way, I'd like to borrow that camera, the one I used the other day.
Claire? You gotta be kidding. That thing's too expensive, man.
Look, I just want to use it for one day. I'll give it right back to you.
Yeah, I'd say it's in the studio.
What's the difference whether I take it out or I use it here?
Listen, man, if you want to use your camera outside, you rent one. This town full of places, they got plenty of them.
Hey, will you do something about this room?
What do you mean? What's wrong with it?
It's too hot. It's bright and I can't work here.
Man, you've been working here for months now, and you've been doing just fine. What do you need a new room for?
Sorry I asked, Jobel.
Well, if you change your mind, I'm gonna be across the street.
yeah, like I don't want to get dinner with you right now. I got work to do. I got aspirations and things like that. Um, just like the classic kind of, yeah, sleaze dynamic, and then also like all the actresses that they get on board too. Like we'll get into it as well, but like they know the name of the game. They're there for what they're prepared to do. um and they even like have like nice little exchanges of dialogue about like why each of them do what they do, why they're even there at all. And it just it amounts basically to this whole idea of just like living the dream in LA, or chasing that American dream. And then the harsh reality is that it's really only a means to get by, but not the dream that they were sold on when they were coming from another state or something. And that's, and like you said, with it getting very more and more depressing as it goes along, even in the score and how that's handled. Um, yeah, it's like this dark picture of just uh, abandoning your family and your friends and your community for something that you don't even know if is even really achievable. And you see that now. You see that transcend. Like these are like the early stages of like where we're at now. If you want to like take it to modern times with like OnlyFans and all these other outlets, or even just even on social media in general, like just like with people who think that this is the only way out now. This is the only way I can get by, or I've got to this, you know, I have to abandon everything just for this, and then maybe, just maybe, I'll get through it, and I'll be a millionaire or something. And we see so many cases where that's not the case. Some people get lucky, some people find a way, but this is an example of people who, I'd say, the Mark character really wants to do more things that are filmic and cinematic, and he's just kind of stuck. He's in a rut, and then he's working with actors and other people who may or may not want that too. I don't know, but they're also kind of just stuck in that point, that void. And LA, you know, I think it was kind of maybe you could probably speak to this too. I don't know, but like LA depicted at this time shows that fake seedy dream of being famous and getting by, but it turns into this yeah, it turns into this hellhole for a lot of people. Um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was like my initial response. I'm trying to like form
Mhm.
yeah, my thoughts together, but I don't know if you yeah.
No, no, you're good. I think at least just geographically, the few times I've been to LA, the type of loneliness that's just touched upon in the film makes a lot of sense because, like I said, geographically everything is so spread apart.
Yeah.
So you definitely get that sense there that if you're kind of like a nobody there, like you're really a nobody. It just feels like you don't exist, when out there in that way. And I also, there's like a funny dialogue exchange between Mark and this other character, Michelle, who we'll talk more about as well. But she's basically the character that he meets on a set, and they start to form like a bond after a friendship afterwards that turns romantic. But it really just starts as just a just like a really just down to earth kind of connection. But basically they're at like her place, which is like this. Mark mentions, "Oh, it's kind of out of the way," and then she says, "Out of the way to what?" And then he says, "Oh yeah, good point." so,
Yeah.
there's very much, and that's the other thing too. I love that the dialogue because it just feels really grounded. I remember you were kind of talking about that too, and I 100% agree. It just a lot of the exchanges just feel almost it kind of has that genuine awkwardness, that you would kind of just hear in real conversations. And Mark's character in particular, he's very curt with a lot of his responses to the point where it is like almost like awkward. Like he has that jaded, just sort of. He's like, "Oh well, it looks that way, doesn't it?" To like half of the things people say, and
I like that though, because like it's just very blunt and direct.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, but it's nice because, as you said earlier about how he does have these very down like very human moments, is that when he's with Michelle, he really opens up, and then he goes from someone who's just incredibly jaded and closed off to somebody who's then hopeful again about their future, and thinking that maybe they can somehow find a way out of it. So yeah, I thought that was really great.
Do you think it could have yeah, because those moments where he really does get to open up a bit, do you think the film could have benefited from more scenes with Michelle and him? Because I really did want, on the one hand, I think it's kind of uh fascinating that it is the length that it is. It's like it's barely like passing 70 minutes to be feature length. Um, but there's so much more story there, I think, with the Mark character, where you really could get him to become less and less any sort of shallow character, and really something that's just unearthed, and you really understand why he is the way he is, and see him with more exchanges with Michelle. We get some good stuff, when he's like photographing her and everything too. But uh, honestly, like I would have loved if there was more. And I don't know if that was like a budget thing, or if yeah, Christine, the director, was just had it like, yeah, had a lot of limitations when they were making it. Uh yeah, I don't know, like because on the one hand, I was thinking when going into this review, like, oh, it'd be interesting if somebody wanted to go in and remake this, but also I don't want to see it remade. I think it's fine the way it is. Like if anything, like take inspiration from it and do something kind of different. But uh, uh, yeah, I don't know if you got that same impression where like there's a lot more potential here that they don't quite use or utilize. It's still good, but I would have wanted more. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Well, first of all, I think just given the fact that this is like this VHS rip that we have access to, who knows if that's even the full movie. There may even be
Exactly.
in the actual cut there may be a little bit more. I mean, I believe in the trailer that was posted by Grindhouse Releasing, there are a few shots in the trailer that I don't excuse me, that I didn't recall being in this like rip that we saw. And there's a few moments in there where it seemed as if it cut abruptly during like a jump cut that didn't seem like an intentional jump cut at times. So um, again, I mean, it's hard to tell some of these films if that was like purposeful, or if there was something cut out that we're not seeing yet. So who knows? Like there may be more to it. But honestly, I do kind of I'm always the kind of person where I really do think less is more in a lot of ways. So I'm okay with kind of feeling in a sense almost kind of empty a little bit in a weird way after a film, because then it just kind of makes me just want to imagine more about it. And I'm kind of left with to pick up different pieces from it. And so I personally didn't get that sense where I thought it needed more of that, but that's just me.
Sure. Sure. No, no, and I mean, and what does stick and what we do get is still like very great. Um, yeah, I think just there's yeah, I mean, I think I like the subtleties more than enough. Uh, I guess I could have just gone for like maybe another additional 10 minutes or something at the very least. But even then, I think there's something really charming about uh filming it in this way and showing just sort of the navigational elements of the Mark character and where he what his life is typically like and where he goes and um how he interacts with people. And he has that he picks up the one girl to take to the beach. I think that's like a really fun little sort of like sidestep to see like what he's like outside of opening up like full on with someone like Michelle, and what he's capable of, and the threat that comes with that too. But it's almost like, yeah, like it's like a fun dynamic where it's adjacent to how he talks to Michelle, where he's trying to kind of test her a little bit and what they can like talk about, and she like drops like a couple of these like trigger words that cause him to go into a frenzy. And I think that's a fun example. I mean, dark. It's not really fun, but but
Yeah.
like an example of like what he's going through mentally. And uh yeah, those little moments are kind of fun in terms of just like, oh, this is like something that uh yeah would set him off in that kind of particular situation. And in other examples that we haven't seen, like we're just seeing like one of many. And that's the one little thing that you kind of have to, well, it's a little distracting, but like, with I guess the advancement of just fingerprints and everything, if strangling is your go-to way of murdering somebody, I'm surprised like he's gone away with it this long. If he's got like
Right.
a huge kill count or something, we don't know.
Yeah.
but but it yeah, it does lend itself to I guess how that whole Hollywood Strangler story came about. But it's still, again, like the fact that they were even able to find something dramatic in that is really cool.
No, I totally agree. And I think it's important to point out, at least for me, that this film it's really hard to tell w- really what is, I guess you could say, real and what's more of like a heightened reality. I think in this movie it feels very much so for instance, a lot of films have dream sequences, right? Or they have a scene where the main character is under the influence of something and they're hallucinating, or I don't know, they open some portal to another dimension or to hell or something. So then basically, like, there's, there's an explanation for why things are, happening, that are outside of, the typical realm. But I really, I think some of my favorite films are the ones where it doesn't give you those explanations, like things just happen,
Yeah.
and then you're left to kind of it's just given to you, and then you have to then sort of deal with that, and I think this film for me falls under that category, because there's just a lot of there's just lots of scenes like that don't seem they just don't really make a lot of sense almost, or it just seem like the just kind of bizarre, like the breakup scene, for instance.
Hmm.
We have to talk about that. That's one of my, like, favorite scenes from the film.
Hello, Mark. This is Michelle. You may feel strange hearing my voice like this. I know I feel funny recording it, but somehow I thought it would be better this way. It's more personal than in a letter. I have to tell you something. I have some things to explain. I've decided not to see you anymore. It's not that I don't want to, but that I don't think it would be good for me. Living with Paul, that's his name, by the way. I don't think I ever told you. Anyway, he seems to be what I need right now. He's sensitive in his own way, and he loves me, or at least he thinks he does. The music at the end of this tape was something he wrote, and it may help you to see why I've decided to stay with him. Our life together is quiet and peaceful. I always know what to expect from him. It's not that it's so predictable, but that he doesn't ever throw me off balance, like you do, like you seem to try to do. I don't think you and I could ever be happy together. It wouldn't be because of me. I know that, because that's all I want out of life. Happiness. It's so simple, really, but you have to try to get it, and I just don't think you want it for yourself. It's as if you're punishing yourself for something. I don't know. It's hard to explain, this feeling I have, but it's what I sense from knowing you. I really care about what happens to you. I hope you start reaching for what is rightfully yours. You deserve to have a good life, full of fun and challenge and peace. I love you, a little, as I know you. And if things had been different when we met, we maybe could have fallen in love. But for now, listen to his music and know that I care about you very much.
In this scene, essentially after Mark and Michelle, it's again a very, very sad story about how they meet, and then she tells her story about how uh she got, like, roped into the business. She came from this small town, and, like you said, had these dreams of making it in LA as, like, a is just like an actor. But then, you move there, you have to get just kind of like a regular 9 to 5 type job to kind of start supporting yourself. She gets a job at the phone company. It doesn't pay enough. And then there's a lot of people around that are saying, hey, if you take these photos for these magazines, you can get paid doing it. She's like, no, that's not why I'm here for. And then she says that the money starts running out, and says, well, I guess I'll do a few of them, just so I can get by, kind of like what you were saying earlier. And then it goes into, like, oh, well, why don't you make an actual, why don't you star in a film, because that's where the real money is. And she's like, no, 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 I can't do that. But then the money runs out doing just the photos, and now she has to go that route. And then, and they, essentially tell her, oh, you'll just put on a wig, no one will recognize you, it's okay, you can, they're kind of manipulating her into telling her that she can do that, and then
Hmm.
still just go on to do anything else that she wants, because she won't be recognized, because, of course, especially back then, I think the stigma with being involved in that was, I mean, it's still around now, but I would imagine back then it was even worse.
Sure.
So then, of course, her whole family finds out, and now she's kind of, uh all her dreams are ruined, essentially. She's kind of stuck now doing this, and she lives with she's kind of a girlfriend of convenience, to this unnamed well, his name is Paul, but it's just like that could be anybody, just
Yeah,
Paul.
yeah.
But just an unnamed musician who appears to being pretty famous, especially with the house that she lives in. That's his house. And so so essentially when she tells it seems as though when she meets Mark, she kind of finally feels this sense like he does, that there's like a sense of hope again. I've met somebody that's kind of reinvigorated me, and that I can then uh maybe go on to actually have like a better life and forget about the past, and just being subjected to everything. And then later she just calls him and says, no, I'm sorry, I have to just kind of stay where I'm at, because this new change meeting you is just too much. Essentially, it's too much of like a left turn, and it's just not something that she can handle. And then she says, oh, and this is all through a voice recording, by the way. This isn't to his face, which is
Over the
also kind of
phone. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then she says, I actually do like this guy, because I at least I know what to expect from him. Whereas you, Mark, you're kind of this, you're a little bit more unpredictable in that sense. And she does mention that he it seems like he's punishing himself or something. So I think she has an inkling that he's not quite, yeah, he does have this dark secret. He's not quite, right in the head. Maybe, that, which is, she's right. He's like going around killing people. But, um,
Yeah.
and then anyway, so the best part is when finally she says, oh, listen to Paul's music, and then you'll kind of understand, I guess, why I'm with him. And then you just hear him playing this like acoustic guitar kind of ballad, and he's humming over it. And then it's actually one of the also like some of the humor in this film that I think is, at least for me, is very apparent. Mark is just listening to it, and he's just like, the anguish in his face just hearing
Yes.
it's like, fuck, like he's really good here,
It's
like
very subtle, but it's
he's
so good. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like, oh, like he's so much cooler than me, or and it's again because Mark is also someone who's wants to get into that LA kind of dream, and then here's
yeah.
like a guy who's an embodiment of that and living that, and it's kind of this like masculine kind of power play, like I'm better than you, I'm more, it's great, it's great, I love it. So but it's just moments like that are just very just bizarre. It just feels like
Sure.
such a strange, and there's all kinds of just yeah, just different scenes where they're playing with the inclusion of like the still photographs, which I think
Yeah.
are some of the best parts. Like for instance, at the end of the film, before the ending, which we'll definitely talk about, but um, you see, so basically before Mark is talking about how like he wants to take pictures of Michelle and just do like a photo shoot with her, and it never really happens. But then at the end of the film, you see all those photos, but again, it just feels like it's something that he's kind of um, an expression of something that he had wished for. A lot of it just doesn't feel real. The whole movie just feels like a whole dream sequence to me in a lot of ways.
I was gonna say
I don't know if
even
you
like
picked up on that, but
yeah, yeah. Even like the photographs we see of her by the end. Yeah, could those be just photographs in his brain? We don't know.
exactly, yeah,
That's the kind of
yeah,
beauty of it. Like these really s- uh like well captured moments of just like her in her element, or just like them doing whatever's they're doing around like the Hollywood sign, or on the beach, or wherever they're going to. Just like these moments that he's kind of harnessing and not sure if he can unleash. Uh, uh, yeah, I'm kind of with you in that. Like we're probably not able to tell what's real and what isn't throughout at least most of this. Like at least there's like there might be some groundedness to the exchanges he has with the producer, and then also with a would-be hire, maybe if he wanted to take a New York job and had the portfolio to show for it. For the most part, and when it comes to just driving other girls around, and the strangling, we don't know for sure if that's real or not, but we do get into his head, into that is definitely something he's thinking about. And and considering, and it just takes one thing to kind of set it off, and it really just creates such a just such a tragic being throughout that whole film to kind of follow, because it's like this is a guy who's definitely he's kind of representative of the everyman who's like struggling and trying to get by at this time in this LA sector. And yeah, it just has like bigger ambitions that are not being fulfilled. And it's yeah, it's you don't see, especially from like the, and I don't think Christine, I'm correct in saying that Christine Hornisher, she never did a feature after this. This is her only full length film. She's done some short films, but this is like her only feature, correct?
I think you're right. Yeah, I don't remember reading about any feature films under her belt. I don't think.
That she's directed, at
Yeah,
least.
yeah, no, no.
Yeah, like you don't see a lot of examples of this covered in this way, and it might speak a lot to just like her instincts to just show a character who uh I don't know, like I need to like read up more on her life, but I think she's just been around like these types of guys who have uh yeah, a lot of these ambitions, but they don't know where to take them to the next level, and they kind of they really do kind of struggle, and it becomes like kind of this competition thing, the way it does with Michelle a little bit. And yeah, when you feel that anguish that like you were talking about, and you're kind of laughing a little bit, but you're also kind of relating a little bit to it as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
because
exactly.
you know uh if you're any sort of artist, whether you're in music or literature, film, what have you, there's always going to be that groupie that kind of clings around, or that fan or something, and then they'll just kind of like leave or cut themselves off completely, and then it's just like it's all like a matter of like introducing and allowing new people into your life and in your circles. And it's like the classic breakup stories that like Hollywood loves to tell so many stories about, but they don't seem to quite nailed down in a realistic way. They find some way to make it really either very corny or yeah, just that's just not relatable to like the everyman or the everywoman. So it's kind of funny how a movie like this that is very like it's harpooning itself on like commentating on Hollywood, and making all of these daring decisions to say like, oh, like we were, like these are characters that were completely screwed over by what we thought was going to be our potential, our means to get into that industry, or find our meaning or our purpose. And it just wasn't the case. Like they just had like a real slap to the face on like what they were being sold on. And it's yeah, I that's why I would say, this film is a lot of things. It's a thriller, it's a drama, it's a romantic comedy maybe in some instances,
Yeah, I
but
agree.
it's also a tragedy. It's a tragedy to
Yeah,
be honest.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
And the circle is completed. And you'll never again go back to that little town of your childhood. And you have no friends, no values. And you're alone with that obscene image of yourself on the screen. Until you get lucky. And you happen to meet someone who cares about you enough to help. Then, very slowly, you start to like yourself again. And the pain goes away. And you think that someday you may even be able to forget.
Yeah, and then to add to what you just said too, I think the fact that first of all, it's unfortunate that this film is so underseen, because
Yeah.
I don't think we touched on that yet. But essentially, for people who don't know, uh, this film came out in a few different iterations with different titles throughout the 70s, and just I barely got like written about. And I think because it was billed as this, as you said earlier, kind of a slasher exploitation film, it was playing at drive-ins where they're showing similar films, and then I would imagine, most people expecting um that type of thing, maybe, were kind of turned off by it. So and then after that it kind of just disappeared, and the only reason why we're able to see it is because there was some UK VHS release. But regardless, I mean, the film has kind of been lost for a long time, and it's just recently that it's being unearthed, which is great. But anyway, the fact that it's kind of a lost film makes the stories of these characters, I think, even more powerful as well. Because it's about people who you just never hear about, right? Because they have these tragic kind of stories that again, I mean, there's so many people who would move out there who have gone through the same thing that they have, and you would never, obviously you would never hear about them. You only really hear about the people who have made it, of course.
True.
So I think the fact that the movie is about that and the film itself is kind of this lost film just made it even more powerful for me.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think the version that is mostly and widely available right now, that is that VHS rip, is the one that's called Insanity, which I think was the
Yeah.
UK title. I know the other titles they were playing with were Twisted Throats, which would have been kind of cool. I think I made a joke here in my notes that like Twisted Throats would be a fun little cover band or something. um,
Yeah.
and then the Hollywood Hillside Strangler was the USA reissue title that they also played with. It's not like the greatest title, but Hollywood 90028 is still kind of, it's got a little bit of a ring to it, so I'm not too like bothered with that title either. But yeah, like uh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It's okay. I love it. I think it's I love how just kind of it's a, because it's the zip code nine
Yeah.
double O two eight. It's a little bit of a mouthful to say, but I love it because it's very just straightforward, because it's just a location, but it just
Yes.
sounds, to me it just sounds so ominous. So that I actually, it's just one of those bizarre titles that I really like personally.
Yeah, and it's also like so exposing. Like if you didn't like this film, you can go to this address right here
Oh, true.
and
Yeah, yeah.
complain,
That's
protest.
funny. Yeah.
The taglines here too for like the different titles. The one that doesn't really sit right with me because it's so generic was the bizarre and terrifying story of a psychotic killer. I'm like,
Right.
okay, that's like every slasher. Yeah, that's
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. But then the one that did get me for the Hollywood Hillside Strangler was a soft, warm throat, a vicious twist of a nylon stocking. I'm like, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah. It's a little more. There's something more to it. Yeah. A little more
Yeah,
poetic, I guess. Yeah.
yeah. At the very least, at the very least.
Right. They put in a little bit of effort there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and also, speaking of this character's, psychotic tendencies, I agree with you earlier when you were saying that films where we have somebody who's a killer, but also in between that has these extremely relatable qualities, I think is always like really, yeah, just really disturbing to me, actually, a lot of times as a viewer. I mean, I think recent, Pearl, I think, was like a great example of that. I know you still haven't seen it, but I think, when you have scenes where you're just, someone's talking and you can, in a lot of ways really relate to them, and then they start killing somebody, and then it's just that it's like, wait, no,
Yeah,
no, no.
hold up.
So yeah, they start yeah, so I think I don't know, I just really love that. I love how then, you're feeling for a character, and then they start doing something that is just horrifying. So I just love how like confronting that is.
Yeah, and that's what makes this film so perplexing but interesting, is that it doesn't go for any of those conventions. I mean, even think about like the Michelle character, when he does end up like heading back to her, the Mark character heads up back to her place and uh sleeps with her. It's like this good elongated 3-minute sex scene. They never even show the strangling. Like the morning of, he checks on her and she's just out. We assume she's dead. Um, you'd think they would have like another dramatic scene where he really like goes in and chokes her out, but that never happens. And I think even like you brought up earlier, that kind of plays into the psyche of it a little bit, where you don't know if this is even really happening or not. But the fact that it's not doing the typical stock kill count sort of thing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
slashers were doing even at that time, even though like they were still kind of finding their mold and getting into their own at that decade. But even still, like it doesn't go for anything that's like too conventional, and at the same time, it never goes too student filmy either because it has a. I think I would say there's like a couple like moments where it might feel like yeah, like you just dropped out of you just got out of college, you just graduated, and you kind of
Yeah.
have like some of these like film student tendencies. But even then, it doesn't really go for those as much either. It really feels kind of unique. Um, and I guess that's just the makings of like a really solid crew, a good writer, and just people that had something. It's one of my tendencies too. Like, we just the weird crime stories that are like local to our towns or where we live, and you just hear things like, "Oh, there's this Hollywood strangler, and he's getting away with all these kills. Like, let's make a movie about that." But then, how can we like, yeah, subvert that and then actually turn into something where like, oh, I'm actually sympathizing with the quote unquote killer in this scene,
Right.
and I shouldn't be. Like that's impressive. That
Yeah.
doesn't typically happen, and
No,
that's what I think. Yeah, really stood out with this movie.
no, no, I love that. That's a great point because for me, especially the first time I watched it, because of the just how different the first scene was compared to the rest of the film. Uh, when he did finally strangle another victim, I kind of went, "Oh yeah, that's right. Like he
Yeah,
does this." You know what I mean? Like I forgot that
yeah,
because I was just getting so just kind of sucked into his character that like yeah, you almost forget that he has that side to him,
yeah.
which I think is really really cool. I think because again, after the first kill, there's a lot of time until he does it again. So it's like you almost forget that it's even gonna happen. So I thought that was very well done. Thought that was really
Mhm.
cool.
Also, the just even the Mark character on his own too, on his own merits at least. Uh, great job as well as making him like uh he's not the predictable killer either. Like he's able to kind of just adjust well in society
Right, right.
and blend in, and not like you would never think he would be that kind of guy who would do that or do it multiple times. He's yeah, he's a little awkward in some exchanges, but even then, like it's kind of like Norman Bates in the original Psycho
Yeah.
series, where like he kind of scutters by a little bit by just being himself and being frank and matter of fact and not too like I mean, okay. Norman Bates might be kind of a weird example sometimes because, like, he does talk about his mother a lot and things like that. But still, like
Sure, yeah.
when he's like in Psycho 2, when he's like readjusting into society and he's like working a job and like he's the if anything, like he's technically the protagonist in that film, and everybody else is trying to screw him over. And you kind of see that here a little bit with Mark, where he's just kind of very straight laced. He's just got a
Oh yeah.
problem on the side if something sets it off, and that it's just the little things. And that's what I kind of like really admired is just like this. It was this approach where like this killer could technically be anybody.
Hmm.
This is a guy who could just blend in with society. Um, and that really that played an effect in it, but that also helped the genre because this is too many different kinds of like feels at once. Like this is not the way. Yeah, the marketing is so weird because they do play it up like it is a sleazy pornographic slasher, and it really just isn't at all. Like even the nudity is not like extreme. It's a soft R at best.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I agree. And speaking of those scenes, like when they're filming the on set,
Yeah,
they were done for me in a very just like uncomfortable way, which I thought was really effective. When because you actually first like you see Mark filming, and just something about watching somebody film. Uh, a woman in that setting, like when you're actually seeing that, it's there's something very unsettling about it, like when you're actually outside of it in a lot of ways. And then you see the producer at the top of he's like at the top of the stairs or something, and he's just looking down, and he's like, yes, yes,
he's got the
it's like,
binoculars and everything like he's
yeah,
at an
yeah,
opera.
yeah. No, I know, yeah, yeah, yeah. It reminded me of Yeah, like the ending of like Solo where they're just like looking through with
Yeah.
the binoculars and like but yeah, no, it was just like very uncomfortable to watch, honestly, at least for me. And then I mean even when Michelle is telling her story and how she, eventually started getting more into the shooting the films, like there's brief little kind of like inserts of her filming that, and it's just, yeah, it's just it's uncomfortable, and it's almost very like has this like tinge of sadness to it too, which I thought
Yeah.
was great. Um, and yeah, and then but there's still like some really subtle humor that I like with the scene where they film. The producer comes and is like, all right, this next thing's gonna be this like this sadist type thing. Like
Yeah.
he probably doesn't even know what sadist even means, like he probably doesn't even know what that word is. Like, and they dress this guy up in this like black like hood, and then it's like taking a while, and then Mark is asking like, how's it going? And then the producer's like, oh, they were having trouble putting his hood on, or making it look scary or something like that.
Yeah.
There's just
Yeah.
like little things like that were really funny to me. And but yeah, but then when the guy comes out in the hood, and it's creepy. Like it's just to me it was definitely uncomfortable in an effective type of way. So
It's like when they invite or yeah, like in relation as a double feature to Last House on Dead End Street, like they just invite Roger Watkins on set for that sadist like scene that they're filming, like he's the
yeah,
one
yeah,
in the hood just coming up like, all right, here we go.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, no,
No,
for sure.
yeah, yeah, and it's the thing that you can tell with the Mark character as well is, he's kind of hiding behind that camera. Otherwise, he doesn't know how to respond to this kind of thing typically. Like his skills as a camera operator in this field are kind of unmatched in this movie's universe, but he uh that's how he's kind of like channeling all of his like inner aggression and maybe even confusion, I would say, uh with every exchange he has with like these porn stars, um his family, and any potential victim that or becomes or someone who becomes a victim of his strangling. And yeah, yeah, in a weird way it finds the humor but also the sadness in that, and it's such a weird like, it, this is a little genre staple I'll throw on top of that, like an obsession sort of
Mhm.
staple a little bit too. Like this is, because I I like the storyline of where he abandoned his family in a way for this. He abandoned the family business uh over the phone. Like he just kind of like does not get along with his sisters who are calling, or his mother, and almost like he's always kind of felt this disdain towards him, and it's in many ways kind of caused him to think this way and go about life this way. And it's half the time you're like wondering like how does this guy even like get by with a car and things like that, and still have a place and still strangle, but also have all of these like really uh human nuances and things that just make him really complicated and not a good person, obviously, but also just like how uh yeah, how do you become this way? And it's one of the few times where it's like they like the script and the direction really wanted to form a character that's not just a stock villain or killer or something, but somebody that actually really is damaged and troubled in some way. And it's I think you were definitely seeing examples of that throughout. One of my favorite slasher characters is Billy from Black Christmas.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Um, I love how you learn just little things about like his background and his family dynamic through the phone calls and the things he would just kind of spurt out, and like yeah, yeah, all the slurs and everything that he would kind of just like throw out there just to like disturb everybody, but still like he's giving you really open insight into his life and what he's all about. And everybody, even the people who should be aware that he's in the house the whole time, are just not even like paying a glance to or paying attention to. It's so, I love the obvious framing of that, and you get little bits of that here with this guy as well. And Michelle is probably the only character in Mark's life that comes close to saying, I don't know about you, but still
Mhm.
gives in anyway. And I don't know. That's just in the 70s. I don't know what it is about this decade, but they just nailed that so well. And then I don't know, 80s then on, people just throw subtlety out the window. So
Right, right. No, no, that's I really like that because the last point you made, the scene where they first, kind of, he drives her home
mhm,
after like a shoot, and then they go to her place. Well, not like she doesn't. It's not her place, but it's where she stays in. Obviously, it's the musician's place. But
yeah,
um, he makes a move on her, and then she kind of holds. She kind of goes back a little bit, and it just felt like a very real moment of, as you said, she's kind of into him, but it's like, wait, this is like something's a little this is too fast, first of all, but also, it was just a very like non better for lack of a better term, it's like the movie's about Hollywood, but it was a very not Hollywood way to go. It was very real, you know what I mean? It was
yeah.
like a very just kind of honest moment, and the film is like littered with parts like that.
I like you here.
Do you have many friends?
Not really. I know some people, but not many friends.
What about who all this belongs to?
Oh, he's not really a friend.
More?
No, different. Sometimes I wish he were just a friend.
You can always get out of it, you know.
It's not that easy. I can't make it on my own.
Is he nice to you?
Most of the time. At least I always know what to expect. And I know what the limits are.
Am I off limits?
I'm not sure.
What's the matter?
I don't know. Maybe it's just too quick for me.
Might be a bad move to trade a sure thing for an unknown.
Is that necessary?
Oh, it's true, isn't it?
What if it is? It's none of your business anyway. I hardly know you.
Going back to the humor and just sort of sadness that goes along with it too. One scene that I think exemplifies it really well was when he goes into the adult video store where he's looking
Yeah.
for the films that he shot of Michelle, and
He's like
um,
literally rubbing his fingers across the
yeah,
hole.
yeah, yeah. He's just yeah. That was a great shot. It was a great shot. But
Yeah.
in the background, there's like for whatever reason, which is again just one of those things that just feels just bizarre. But if you remember, there's like a speaker, like a radio playing, and it's just like like somebody like preaching, like just preaching like a sermon in this, talking about sin and like repenting in this an adult video store, which I thought
Yeah.
was really really fun, and I think it just kind of speaks to his like shame in a lot of ways. I mean, the film
Yeah.
doesn't really go into detail about him as like a religious man or if you grew up in that background, but
It's that
um
juxtaposition. Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So and of course then he goes in and views the film, and then he's just yeah, like he's just it's hard for him to look at it that he filmed somebody that now that and it's sad that it took for somebody that he cared about to finally realize, oh, what I'm doing is kind of morally questionable in a lot of ways, that that he didn't see it before, that it was until it was somebody that he actually had a genuine connection with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean that whole scene, then he walks out just totally just yeah, ashamed. I think that's a big part of the film, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, yeah, like he built a connection and then he kind of took the more mature angle to say like, yeah, I'm not for this. This is why am I still here? Why am I still in this business?
Yeah.
Um it's funny you bring that up too because I don't want to say I don't know if it's still running or not, but like just further down the road where I live, there is an adult video store that still is like apparently open and running, but uh yeah, I don't know if what that scene looks like in 2023, but I know at least at the time it's just like uh
Yeah.
yeah, people just kind of rummaging through and seeing like, oh yeah, what could I get what can I get access to? What peep shows are open and things like that at the time. And
Right, right. Hey, people love that, physical media nowadays. They want to go
I
back to
know,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, so I guess
exactly,
that's part of it too. But no, it's funny. I know of a place like that as well. It'd be funny if it's the same place you're talking about. I'm not sure, but it's on like a major road and it's right there. Like you can't miss it. So
yeah,
I always thought that was kind of funny too. And also there's this, I guess I don't even know if I could call it an urban legend because it's not even that well known. I think I've only one person told me about it, but there's this up the street from where I live, there's this building that actually years ago I heard from my dad used to be an editing house.
mm,
Which is interesting. Like it's like what an editing like people they have that, because back then, I mean, they had facilities dedicated to just editing. I think they're working with
sure,
actual film there.
analog
Um,
and such.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
but it's defunct. But that building has just been sitting there this entire time, and the windows are all blacked out. But it's weird. Every once in a while, I still see like cars parked there, and like there's times I've seen like a limo parked there, and weird stuff. And the rumor that I've always heard, well, just from like one person or two people, but it's I just like the story. But apparently, it's like they film like porn movies in there. Supposedly, that's what I've heard. So uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean that's a whole other there could be a Mark going there filming stuff and strangling people where I live too, who knows. But
sure, sure,
it sounds like yeah, that could be something there. But yeah, no, that yeah, that whole scene was great. And it's also funny because he was the only person in there as well. Because
yeah,
um the place that the store that I know of that every time I drive by, because you can see inside too, which is the hilarious part. Yeah, there's nobody like ever there, at least of course when I drive by. But yeah, I like how he was just like alone in that scene, because it's just maybe he would feel a bit better if he's, oh, there's a bunch of other people here, but it's just me, and this is like my, I don't know, this is like my work, and it was just, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, as like a I'm sure maybe you've been through it too as a
sure,
creative person. When you've done work for somebody that you kind of just needed to do because you needed to, to make some money, or and then you look back on it and it's just like you're kind of like ashamed of it, in a way. Not just because it's the content of it, but it's not really you, or
yeah,
maybe he's thinking like this is me, I have these aspirations, like I want to do, like you said, I definitely I think he makes a joke where he says I have two crickets named Orson or something like that. So
yeah,
it's like, of course, everyone. It's like, it was same thing in Last House on Dead End Street, I think, where there's like a Citizen Kane reference in that somewhere.
yeah.
Um, but no, it definitely appears like he wants to do something more artistic, but um, then he realizes like, no, like I guess this is me, this is my art, so to speak. So it's hard for him to come to terms with that.
Yeah, no, the whole time he's really wrestling with all of those elements. And uh yeah, Mark going into the adult video store as well, and seeing that he's the only one there. Like I think there's like, yeah, there's humor there in that, like, dude, like you don't have anybody you could spend time with instead of going there. But
Right,
also
right.
he's got like a repertoire for saying like, oh, I might have produced something that is being sold in this very store, and that's why I'm here. And like that adds another layer to like him being there too. And uh that's also kind of sad in and of itself,
Yeah,
because it's not
yeah,
something that he's even proud of. It's just like, well, what can I at least pull from this, or at least see what I'm even producing or contributing, at all. Because yeah, no, I think, yeah, like you said, we've been in positions. I've worked gigs where um I wouldn't have edited something a certain way or shot something a certain way and not feel like it was my own baby, my own creation or something. And that's always like a tough thing to kind of tackle, because uh sometimes you just only ever take those gigs for the money, or the means to just stay active and relevant. Because yeah, I think most of us would love to do lo- we'd love to do the artistic things we love to do actively, and also get paid, and also, do it our way. And we're in such a weird cycle, a weird system. I don't know even know how to describe it, or put words to it, but where that's just not always the case, and that we have to kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like do our share to like help somebody else out. Which is fine. Like if it's somebody like we actually believe in and care about, or want to help out, that's one thing. But if it's somebody who's, let's say, like you're shooting a video for somebody who's like promoting a business that you don't really particularly like or agree with or something, and you're just there just to film it, like that's a whole other feeling than doing something that like drives you and carries you through that world. So in that sense, yeah, yeah, you totally get where Mark's coming from, especially even in 1973, where neither of us were alive, but we can still kind of see that world for what it is, and people just trying to get by. And yeah, it's like this, it's the gross LA nature of everybody slithering their way through into people's lives and gaining something from them. And
Yep.
uh Mark recognizes that, but he is making attempts to get out of it. It's just never successful. And then that's what, I don't want to spoil, but leads to this harrowing ending that like culminates really everything that we've seen at that point, and what we know about him as a character, and his relationships with all the other characters, as minimal as they are. Uh, it's one of these just stunning, perfect endings, which my I don't say this often about movies, where my jaw just dropped to the ground, and I can't
Same.
believe they did this.
Same.
But it was one of those moments where like, oh shit, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, no,
uh,
I am 100% with you because, like I said earlier, and I think I mentioned it to you as well, that I knew that the ending was something to behold. It was very
yeah,
much of a talked about. It was like the biggest talked about point of contention for this film. So I got to tell you, the minutes leading up to it, I was just so tense because I was just thinking like, what could it possibly be? And I was thinking of all these different things in my head, and then of course it happens, and then it was the last thing that it was like the last thing that I expected, but it made perfect sense. It was one of those endings where I was just surprised that like oh, like no one did really surprised no one ever thought of this before or did this before. You know what I mean? It just felt that, I guess, for lack of a better term, just classic. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like it really does. Like I feel like one of the greatest ending shots in a movie. I know it's a lot of hyperbole there, but just I don't know. I mean, when I think of just endings like that you really remember, that just knock you out. I mean, I think this is easily, I could put it up there, for me.
sure,
So, and yeah, I mean that's it's really like it's not something we should honestly spoil. I think
yeah,
people
yeah.
just need to see it for themselves.
I
So
will say the only thing is I want to see more bonus material on
how they did it, yeah.
how they did it. Yeah, that's all I want to say. Yeah, I want to
Same,
like,
same.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the only minor thing I'm going to spoil is that it does kind of when the ending transitions into itself, it got a legit jump scare out of me. The
Yeah,
first
me
time I
too.
watched it, because I had the volume like blasted loud, because when you're watching the VHS rip, you have to like really turn it up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when it happened, I was like, whoa. Yeah. And yeah, it's just incredible. Just the effect of that. So yeah, I'm gonna actually do the due diligence for the first time on Fleapit After Dark by not spoiling the ending of the movie. You have to watch this movie for yourself, and then you can come back, and then you can uh laugh with us or criticize us for liking the movie, but that's the
Exactly.
viewer's prerogative. Yeah, and the listeners. I forget that this is a podcast. You're listening to this too, probably, but still, yeah. I'm not going to spoil the ending. It's one of those really great. Yeah, I I didn't stand, but it is a standing ovation kind of
Yeah.
statement. Yeah,
No, no, totally, totally. And yeah, so we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that
yeah,
because I feel like
yeah.
the more we talk about it, something's gonna slip out,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and but I really liked what you said about just how what we're going through now in terms of trying to be a creative yeah, making films for instance, or visual media. I almost said content. I caught myself there. I caught myself there,
We're
because
content creators, but we're
yeah,
not.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
caught myself. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But so what's interesting about what you said was that you look back at the world of this film and what they were going through at Marcus, and so it's comforting in a way because you realize, oh, okay, in some ways it was like very similar, right? So it's not like what we're going through now is anything new. It's definitely more it smells a little bit different, you could say, but it's still like the same idea, same predicament. But then at the same time it's also very uh yeah, just very harrowing because it's like, oh well, nothing has changed like this entire time, it's still the same,
Yeah.
so that's the other. And it's funny because Mark almost seems as though he has this throughout most of the film. It seems it kind of, you get the feeling that he almost sees like that he's above it of what he's doing, even though he's another cog in the machine really in this
Yeah.
industry. He almost has a sense of, nah, I'm gonna get a better job and do something more meaningful or more interesting. So he kind of has this, yeah, this sort of bravado of, when he goes in and films the scene, he's very much like, I know what I'm doing, like I'm, which is of course, if you're doing a shoot, but no, he just has this um sense that like he's better than this. But ultimately I think later in the film then he has that realization that, well, this is all that maybe he's not, I mean, this is all that he does, and then so um I think it's something that, like, a lot of people can experience themselves, where you think like that you're too cool for something or you're better than it, you're above it, and then you realize that really maybe you're not, maybe you are that, and you're contributing to this like machine in this industry, and
Mhm.
uh so you're not uh yeah, I mean, you're not exempt from it in that sense.
Let's say like he got the dream job that he wanted. Outside of all of that, would he still have the same tendencies that he does when he's doing porn work or other work of that nature?
Right, right.
Like we don't know. Like maybe that's all he knows and that's all he's used to and that's all he kind of he says he has all these other aspirations and things he wants to do in life and or get out of where he lives, but we don't. Yeah, we never get to see what happens if he does achieve that sort of status and that role. Yeah, for all we know, he would just be doing maybe even more hyper produced pornography and not even like documentary or yeah, fictional film or yeah, working any sort of industry job that would take him to those places, journalism or something. um yeah, it's fascinating, and then I think it also makes a fun case where especially for that time period too, because when they bring in like the sadist film element a little bit,
Yeah,
as weird as how it's done in this movie as an example, there's still artistry to that you can make a case
yeah,
for.
yeah, yeah,
Same way we can make for a lot of the porn too.
yeah.
um and I think the movie never deviates from that either. Like, it's not like it never has this like firm lowbrow attitude towards that
Absolutely
line
not.
of
Yeah.
work. And I kind of admire it for that, where it's, that's just what certain people had to do. And again, for certain people it worked, so I really do admire that. It's not doing, yeah, a lowbrow judgmental eye, really. It's just kind of showing life for what it was in that part of LA. Um, And you get elements of that now, but I would say at the time, like, that was kind of ballsy to just kind of be upfront about it. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no, sorry, yeah, I agree. It's not done in a way to sort of like shock the audience into
yeah, yeah.
like maybe like a lot of other exploitation films would do. And then also another unique part of the film we didn't get to yet, that also kind of surprised me too, and was the whole aspect of like the city itself and how people were kind of getting pushed out because everything is getting bought out and rent is going up, and a lot of these historic houses and buildings that gave the city kind of the culture and the look and feel that it did are now being replaced by empty apartment buildings, and
When
that
they
was kind of a sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, not to cut you off, when they dropped that line, I'm like, that's literally happening, like, right where we live right now. Like,
Exactly,
they're just
exactly.
feel yeah, yeah. But go ahead.
So
So, yeah.
oh no, you're good. Yeah, I agree. So in a way, it's like weirdly for me comforting that like okay, like this has been happening for a long time. You know, we're not
Yeah.
the only people who have experienced this in this time. It's not anything exactly new, but then again, it just sucks that that nothing is it's only getting worse. It's not getting any better. You know what I mean? You know, so
It's beautiful.
Not many left now. They're tearing most of them down.
Why?
To have space to put up new apartment buildings that will stay empty. Pretty soon, nothing in the city will be more than 30 years old.
Except some of the people.
They won't be here. They're all moving out to the desert.
Why?
Because we're buying up all their houses so we can tear them down and put empty apartment buildings in their place.
You're talking circles. Why will the apartments be empty?
Because they're new, so they're expensive. And nobody under 30 has that kind of money.
And everybody over 30 is out of town.
Right.
Why can't the people under 30 borrow money from the people over 30?
Because the people over 30 lost money when they sold their houses. And living in the desert is expensive.
Because there's no water?
Because they want to live in a desert with grass, trees, and golf courses. Did you ever hear of a desert with a sprinkler system?
so yeah, no, I thought that was the connect the very obvious parallel between them as people and then just how they could easily get replaced just as easily and never to be heard from again as the a lot of the history and the old houses and buildings there too. I thought was kind of a cool way to express that.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw some letterbox reviews, or even just some general reviews too on like Rotten Tomatoes and things like that say the overdubbing is very noticeable and obvious in those sequences where it's like they're filming a lot of like B-roll
Yeah.
behind their heads and things of that nature and letting them kind of like record all of this dialogue where they're kind of explaining what's going on. But I don't know, like as an example here, I didn't mind that at all. I thought it actually kind of lent itself to it gave off a really fun little uh neo-realistic, almost
Mm.
kind of a documentary sort of look to the film where um yeah, that sort of stuff doesn't really matter. It's we're seeing kind of the passage of time go by. uh, uh, sure, you could argue like pretty fast, but still it, I don't know, it's raw, it's genuine, it's showing a connection with the characters, it's showing uh what's going on in their minds and their concerns and things like that, that I didn't mind that at all. I can understand that being a criticism from an editing standpoint, but
Mhm.
yeah, this was an example where I thought it worked, especially for the brisk pace that it is. That I was yeah, I was fine with it.
And speaking of documentary feel, uh I see people point this out, and I agree. I think it's also just a great time capsule to see what LA looked like at that time.
Yeah,
In a similar fashion, like when you, of course, watch, the biggest example would be, yeah, like you watch Taxi Driver, French Connection for New York, or yeah, even like honestly, yeah, Basket Case too. Funny enough,
yeah, yeah,
you kind they just filmed a lot of sequences on the street, very French New Wave style for those movies. So you really just see what it looked like. All those people are real people. All those places they're not sets or anything like
Hmm.
that. So this film did a similar thing with LA at that time, and and I always appreciate films where, of course, like you said, there is some B-roll, but I like how there's just I love extended sequences of characters just walking, just going about their day, and then you see
Yeah.
just the environment they're in, and that's kind of how the director chooses to just kind of show us where they live in the environment, and then narratively, like how that tells us, like visually, it tells us a lot of things too. And because even the scene where he's walking around downtown LA, you kind of see all these people who just look a little bit more, I guess, business like, you could say. And even though Mark, he dresses, I guess, kind of business casual, I guess you could say. He wears
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a shirt the whole movie too, which is
Sure.
funny. But he still feel you still feel like he's just like not at all in like connected with those people whatsoever. He's just a complete, just like, he's invisible, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
um so there's just moments like that, or when he's driving around, and and just seeing the scenery that tell you a lot about the environment, which I always appreciate in films. So
Sure. Well, that's the showmanship of really good direction. I think to
yeah,
have actors meander a little bit more and not have to do these overly staged blocking in scenes. If they can walk around and if they can just kind of say lines or if they can just kind of be in the moment, it's
yeah.
just so much more natural. And we need to kind of return to that a little bit. I go back to a lot of films where I just see scenes where it's like a character is chopping up carrots or making dinner or something, and then another character is just kind of talking about her day or something like that. And today, that's just so rare. Like in a
Yeah, that's
Hollywood
true.
production, like it's like there has to be immediacy to everything, and they can't have people just kind of coast, with the scenes for a
Right.
few minutes. And that's what you definitely like elicit in this film is that like characters are just for a large portion are just kind of hanging out and talking or having sex or doing something, but it's like they take their time, and that patience is so missing in a lot of stuff these days. And I if there's anything else to appreciate, like especially for a first time feature length director and only being her only film, I mean, kudos for capturing that and capturing that aspect of LA, especially when it was, I guess, maybe a little daring or different to do that at the
Hmm.
time. So, and the writer too, Craig Hansen. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole team, everybody involved. So,
Well, so funny enough, the writer is actually also Christina Hornisher, the director. It was like, I think, a pseudonym she used.
okay,
So she
okay,
wrote and directed the film too. Which, like,
nice.
I don't know if you know why. I guess in those days, like, people use pseudonyms for that. Like, I know John Carpenter did that for Assault on Precinct 13, where John T. Chance is like the editor and things like that. I'm not sure why that was a thing, but and I could be totally off base with this, but who knows, being like a woman director at that time, maybe having making it appear as though like more, men worked on it, that maybe helped its chances in some way. I don't know, maybe that was kind of a thing as well. So that's possible too. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, there's just something about the, like we said, the conversations the characters have, the dialogue, and the interactions that just feel very grounded and very honest, which I think is definitely one of the highlights of. I mean, I would just say, like, if any, like, the whole film, that's really a big part of it. It just I think we could also get into, who would you recommend this to, and I think I would, anybody, who yeah, wants to move to that city and has those kinds of aspirations. I think definitely it's a good movie to watch. Not to 100% say that, oh, this is what's going to happen to you, but it just, it's a cool kind of dose of reality, I think, which is feels very relatable and grounded. It'd be funny to pair this up actually with um I don't know, like a very positive, like or overly glamorized film about Hollywood, and then ended with this. I think that'd be kind of a cool thing,
I, I
to
was gonna
do.
say the most recent example might have been that Babylon movie, but I didn't see that film, the Damien
Yeah,
Chazelle, uh, where it kind of over glorifies the new or like the origins of Hollywood and
right, right.
yeah.
I would
Uh,
say with that film, it glamorizes it, but in a different way than
okay.
I guess you would expect, because I mean it is very unapologetic in a lot of the just like debauchery, and not only just that, but just a lot of the like all kinds of racism, and all the discrimination that people had to go through working in that in different ways. But I would say it almost kind of glamorizes all the struggle, because there's this I haven't seen the movie, so I don't want to spoil it, but there's this kind of sequence at the end that you in one way you can kind of read it as all of the, because there's scenes in the film where people on set, because this is back in the day before they had a lot of like safety regulations, for instance. So there's like people like dying on set because they're in the booth with like the camera when the cameras were extremely like loud when they first introduced sound, so they had to put it in like this box so it would insulate the sound, so it wouldn't be like rolling really loudly on set, so people would be in that, and then it would get so hot and they would have no air, and they would just pass out and die in there. And anyway, so there's all kinds of instances like that in the film. And then it's like at the end it almost kind of says like all of that, it was worth it for the power of cinema in some way, which
Yeah.
I thought it was a great movie, but yeah, no, that there's almost kind of in a funny way, it kind of you could read it like that, is it sort of glamorizes it, but in like it's very unapologetic and forthright about just how a lot of the darkness behind it, but it's almost kind of just like that's just part of it, and it made for a lot of great art, and all these people who suffer it, at least they're like immortalized forever,
Yeah.
um in the celluloid, so
Sure.
yeah, but
I've at least seen the scene with Toby Maguire where he's like this pasty, gluttonous, like version of that where it's like, oh, it's all for the yeah, the money and the fame and it's just
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
to get
yeah,
wasted and yeah. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, where it does address some of those things. Again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know how well it does that, but the other example I can only think of, and it's a film I really like, even though it takes that approach in a different direction completely. But I really like Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
yeah, same,
Strictly even just as like a hangout movie. Like I just
yeah,
really liked these characters. They just happen to have this Hollywood backdrop, you know, coasting over them the whole time. But that doesn't seem to really idle them or affect them as much. Like they've got their own interpersonal relationships and things going on that take the uh, take the first stand on everything. And then Hollywood is just it's like this. Yeah, yeah, and even this movie, they treat it like it is this, yeah, this American dream, this thing that like is maybe achievable, but it's not without its shortcomings, and I
yeah,
and
yeah,
I think that it shows that baggage well, and it shows the potential well. It shows that it could go both ways depending on who you are and who you know and where you're connected, and um, that's all that counts. And you know what? If I had one more tidbit to give for this movie, it's to bring back the porn stash, but not have it be associated necessarily with porn. I'm not talking about this like hipster bullshit where we're like, oh, we're gonna be ironic and bring back the mustache and
right,
twirl it up and everything, but like make it normal again.
yeah, yeah, that yeah.
When people talk about like bringing back the tradition, like that's what I'm talking about.
Right, right. Just yeah, no. I was in Australia last year because I have like some family
Mhm.
there, so I visited, and
Nice.
I was
Yeah.
walking around and I noticed a lot of people, my age, a little bit younger, older, like a lot of mullets down
Yeah.
there actually. And then I was with my cousin and I said like, "What's the deal?" with this. And he said, well, yeah, it's a thing where it's kind of like ironic, like they know it looks bad, but they're owning it. And I'm just like, yeah, like you said, why don't you just own it? I guess, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
it's like, yeah, no, it's same idea,
sure.
it's like I think they actually do like it, but they understand they're gonna be made fun of. It's like, oh, like it's just a joke. It's like I'm ironically wearing a mullet, like come on, dude.
Yeah, yeah,
Like just yeah, we know you like it, so just
sure.
if you like it, then that's fine. Be confident with that. So
I really hope Christine for this film like shot extra scenes where like that we might see in the bonus features where it's just Mark like trimming his mustache or like maintaining it or like getting it to look as authentic as it is as what I believe to be. I hope it's not fake, but yeah, no, you look like he was carrying that pretty well as a character.
Mhm.
So, yeah, no, I'm yeah, I've got I'm half Australian, so I've got family out there too. None
Oh,
of
I had
them,
no idea.
yeah, no, none of them, none of my cousins that I know of have a mullet. One of my uncles might, but
Yeah, not yet,
uh,
not yet.
not yet, at least. Yeah, yeah. But I didn't know that was a trend. Actually, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, at least in Sydney, because that's where I was. So I don't know if it's just like a regional thing there or not, but
Okay,
yeah, I saw a lot of that.
nice, nice. Yeah, I've been meaning to go back out there as well. And yeah, be the proprietor for Ozploitation and take the genre back to its roots with an upcoming film that I've been working on as well. But that's something 10, 20 years down the line if I ever get around to it as well. But like right at the very least, like I want to go back to Australia because I've only ever been there once. I visited family when I was 6, going on 7, and got to know mostly everybody. Um, everybody that was at least still around. But yeah, now that it's
Mm,
easier to get there than it used to be in the last couple of years. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely aim to go back. That's cool. They got. I've never been to Sydney. I've been to Adelaide, Queensland, Melbourne, Perth, and I've driven through Brisbane, but yeah, never went to Sydney.
Oh
Uh,
wow, that's funny because I've pretty much only been to Sydney because that's where my family lives at. So
nice.
hopefully in the future I'll get to venture out more. But yeah, no, I mean, hopefully the nice thing about Sydney is that there are just like so many. If you're in a certain area, there's like 20 different beaches you can go to and like a 15-minute drive each, pretty much. So um, yeah, hopefully you make it out there at some point.
One of these days. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Any final notes for Hollywood 90028 from 1973? Anything you would like, any closing statements you got, Alex, or anything you would like to recommend to uh, uh, somebody who's never seen the film and may be interested in the film, or somebody who uh, is curious about the film but doesn't know if they're gonna like it or not, especially given in the release bundle that it's in right now, where we can only access a VHS rip, and hopefully waiting on a Blu-ray or some sort of propped up quality. But yeah, what would you say to get somebody who's outside of this realm to check it out?
That's a good question because yeah, in a lot of ways it's a hard sell given the just current iteration that it's at right now. I guess I've been trying to like tell people. I did tell one friend about it, and he went and watched it, and because he's also into like kind of this sort of similar type of stuff that we are. So I guess yeah, you and there's one other person that has seen it that I can talk to you about. But basically, besides that, it is a hard sell outside of people who would immediately be just more in tune to this type of thing. But I mean, I think when the restoration comes, whenever it does, because as of now, we don't exactly know when it's coming out. I think that it exists, and they Grindhouse Releasing has announced that they've been doing a few like theatrical screenings here and there. But as of now, like there's still no concrete release date. I would say, I mean, I would really only start to really tell people to watch it once that's out, because the current iteration that it's in right now, I can see how it'd be difficult to kind of watch if you're not already I don't know, just kind of like accustomed to that type of really, really low quality type of VHS type kind of thing. But at the same time, that is kind of in right now, so I don't know.
Sure.
It depends on the person. I don't know. How would you how would you kind of sell it or
Well, I
talk
would
to people
partly,
about it?
yeah, I mean, I would partly tell people not to, as much as I like the new restored trailers and the marketing of it, not to believe too much of that. I think it kind of sells this one sort of story where could be this very uh uh yeah, sleazy pornographic slasher film, and I don't really want to call it that because it kind of goes into too many different ventures where it avoids those kinds of trappings and actually tells something that's a little bit more personal and effective, and from a voice who seems to really understand that side of LA culture at the time. So I would go in not really watching any trailers or anything that would spoil it, and also um, go in knowing that it's yeah, telling something that's a little bit different and less popular. You just have to kind of cut around some of the visuals in terms of just the video quality, because we don't, yeah, again, we don't have that new restored version yet that uh, uh yeah, like you said, the Grindhouse website, they seem to be playing up the trailer well enough on their YouTube channel, but like you go on their website and they don't have like dirt on this film still to really kind of share about, or at least at the very least any updates on like where that's at. So yeah, we're kind of just waiting in limbo. But to anybody who's coming from the outside and is the slightest bit curious, yeah, like I would say go in knowing that it's not your stereotypical horror film, slasher film, thriller, crime film. It's telling a little bit more of a personal story about somebody who is really struggling with their isolation, their loneliness, their upbringing, and the city they live in, and has a bit of an identity crisis just through that alone. Um, and again, we've seen so many stories tell that same very thing before, but this is an interesting case where it's not doing it, it's not in your face about it. It's just very yeah, like, yeah, it's just not, it's not like it's not being preachy. It's just kind of showing it for what it is, and also showing LA for what it is, and not, yeah, not treating you as a viewer like you're an idiot. I guess is the software. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
I
how
agree.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not insufferable in any way, you know,
Sure.
because it's yeah, it's a film about loneliness, that is yeah, like, I think just is like you said, just feels grounded, you know.
Mhm.
It doesn't, you know, it doesn't really attempt to make you feel bad for anybody. It's just more of here, you know, it's just presenting you with them, you know, which I think is always really great. You know, it's not like sentimental in any type of way either,
No.
which like I usually tend to kind of personally for me, I'm not a big fan of, but so I think it's just you know, they're again, I mean, it's like you said, it's funny to talk about a movie about a guy who, you know, strangles people and say like, oh, it's actually like there's a lot of relatable things in it, you know. But I think there's people out there who are listening will understand what we mean, you know, that it's not literally in that sense, but just films that kind of, you know, you can find certain things and characters that are actually very universal, you know, and feelings of, you know, loneliness and unrealized dreams and being trapped and so on and so forth. So yeah, no, I think there's definitely a lot there that people can grab onto. And again, I think it's it actually works really well with the fact that it's presented as one thing and then it kind of takes a different turn. So I'm always a big fan of that type of way of doing it. So.
Mm-hmm. And so what we're gonna close and say here is don't go to LA, at least not now, until things change. So avoid. I'll also just briefly mention my letterbox review, my initial review. I might update this. I think I said something along the lines of stomps through rather than treading the waters of loneliness, like we've mentioned, abandonment, confusion, and looking for morals and purpose in life, which was especially effective by means of shock photography stills, which I forgot to also bring up, but um, uh, those edits, I think, are probably what make this film stand out the most. Is just those photography stills, and I know you brought them up briefly, but yeah, they're I think they definitely add to the groundedness and also um yeah, and the loneliness, I think. That those cutaways to his eyes all the time, like, oh man, too intense.
Yeah, it's something so simple but extremely effective. Um,
Yeah.
and no, and yeah, no, that's an aspect that I also think is lost in a lot of films these days. That's all you need sometimes. You just need a shot of some dude's eyes that are just crazed, and then cut away to yeah, just something else. And it's just something very just simple but really effective about that I really appreciate a lot of the time. And then yeah, I mean, just the stills, as you said, tell that you know th- I know you and I like to talk about title sequences, about how that's kind of like a lost art. And the opening credits to this is also a very effective way, because it's giving you the credits, but it's also over the stills of him as like as a kid with his brother and his sisters, leading up to this accident, or maybe also a murder. We don't really know. And then it kind of sets up the sort of domineering relationship that it seems like his mother and his sisters kind of have over him in a way, and why he then ended up trying to get away from that. And then also the thing I just realized as well about that scene is, like, who's taking those photos, right? I mean, who took that is kind of also a little bit strange. I mean, again, sort of another Peeping Tom connection, where of course in that film his character is also named Mark again, which is funny. His father was taking all those shots of him as a kid, and
Yep.
that's so that's also something that there's a lot of things there that you kind of go, wait, but then right, like, who took those photos that are very much left unsaid, which again, I always love that. I'm a big proponent of that type of way of doing it. So
Yeah. Yeah, who was the ghost taking the photos of the whole family at the time? No,
yeah, exactly.
that's one other thing I'll quickly add is that, like, if you are the slightest bit of fan of Peeping Tom, or you really enjoyed that film or like this film, definitely give the Hollywood 90028 a chance, because it definitely uh, fills those shoes really well in a similar fashion, but just a different location and slightly different dynamic, but still kind of tackling those similar themes. Yeah, give it a shot if you like any of those other influences. And then yeah, I'll go ahead and close here then. Alex, anything you'd like to plug for the listeners and the viewers, maybe that you've already plugged already, but go ahead and plug again if you want, or anything that's coming up for you in the pipeline that you're really excited about? Share away. This is your chance, this is your platform to say as you will.
Right. I would say, yeah, like I said last time, as Jeremy mentioned, I'm in a band called XK Scenario. We're on all the, yeah, we're mainly on Instagram, social media. Check us out there. We have a lot of material on Bandcamp, YouTube, and yeah, so yeah, we're working on a lot of different things, but at the moment, you can check us out on there. So
I can give a personal shout out. This guy's shooting some cool stuff on 8mm, so be on the lookout for whatever that's gonna end up looking like. I'm excited for what's to come.
thank you.
And thank you again for coming on as well. It's always fun to just have somebody come to me with a film that I never would have otherwise like looked up or researched, or knew I wanted to talk about until I saw it, and I'm glad I did. So yeah, thank you for bringing this one up and coming back on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Thanks again for having me back so soon. That was really great. Thank you.
Yeah, this will be the back-to-back double feature that we'll do. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then you can find me over at Jeremobi. I am on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, and on Odyssey, where I'm posting most of these lately. If YouTube copyright guidelines are at fault with me for whatever reason, sometimes I run into trouble there. And then also on SoundCloud, where you can listen to this, and then hopefully at some point on Spotify and Apple Music as well, where you can listen to this very podcast, Fleapit After Dark. And in terms of stuff that is coming up on the pipeline, I have a short micro doc on my trip to Utah that is going to come around in the next couple months. It is still in the editing stages, but I'm really excited for it, and it sounds like a small audience is really excited for it too. So I will be plugging that away and showing a few more teasers here and there to kind of get people excited. Other than that, same old, working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes. But anywho, Alex, thank you for coming on. And for everybody listening and watching, have a terrific good night.